request everybody. Sairam and welcome back. Offering our salutations to the Almighty, respected dignitaries, distinguished delegates, eminent academicians, educationists, researchers, welcome back to the technical session 2, presenting on the theme, The Journey of Values Through a Psychological Lens. If values guide our actions, psychology helps us understand how those values are formed, nurtured, and sustained throughout life. This session explores the inner processes that shape human character and the vital role of psychology in cultivating values that lead to individual and societal well-being. To begin this session, it is our privilege to invite Dr. Shruti Niraj, Associate Professor and Head of the Department of Clinical Psychology at the Madhusudan Sai Institute of Medical Sciences and Research. A chartered clinical psychologist, registered with the United Kingdom's Health and Care Profession Council and the British Psychological Society, Dr. Shruti brings over 2 decades of experience in mental health. She also leads the Institute's pioneering bachelor's program in mental health, integrating modern psychological science with Indian knowledge systems. Today, she will share her insights on the topic, The Journey of Values, a Psychological Perspective in the World. May I now invite Dr. Shruti Niraj to address the gathering.
Oh, this is very high. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I offer my humble pranams at the feet of Sadhguru. How's everyone feeling? You had lovely lunch? Yeah? Feeling energetic? Yeah? We've got the post-lunch session, so I would try my best to keep you awake. Yeah, and if you want, you can, stand up and do a little bit of movement that will keep you awake, right? Okay, so at the outset, I would like to thank the organizing committee for the invitation to speak today. It's an honor and privilege to be part of this wonderful conference. I would like to begin my talk with a simple question. How many of us, you can raise your hands, hope that our students become compassionate, responsible, honest, purposeful human beings? Everybody's hand will go up, right? We want, not our student to just kind of, be academically brilliant, right? Not have brilliant heads, but also compassionate hearts, right? So we want them to become good human beings with love, compassion, service-oriented mindset. So, these qualities that we talk about, love, compassion, kindness, service orientation, all these values, where do they emerge? Where do these qualities actually come from? Do they come from, because we as educators teach them? Or, do we kind of, have this kind of, teaching to our students what is right, what is wrong? Or do they emerge from something deeper within themselves, right? So I would like to explore these questions with you all today in this talk from 3 perspectives. First is the developmental perspective. So it's a branch of psychology where we look at how human beings from, not when they are born, it's even before birth, from womb to tomb, as we say. So it's a study, the branch that studies how human beings develop across lifespan. So how we develop our thinking capacities, how we develop as social beings, as human beings, right? Then second perspective I want to talk about is neuroscience, right? So what is going on in this kind of, little brain of ours, when we are learning these things from when we are born till we die. Then third perspective, of course, because my professional identity is a clinical psychologist, and you must be wondering why a clinical psychologist is talking about values, right? So I will come to that in a minute. So third perspective I want to talk about from my professional experience of being a psychologist and working with people clinically with mental health issues. So it's this perspective that I want to start with, a story from my clinic. So a few years ago, I met this young gentleman, Alex. He's 19-year-old. Of course, I've changed his name so that I can share his story confidentially with all of you. He presented with anxiety. He was doing well otherwise academically. He was in first year of university, doing really well academically, no problem. But he told me that he's having problems feeling very anxious, worried about things, and worried about he's not good enough, and problem sleeping. And of course he was kind of always on his phone and digital devices. As Bhuna was mentioning that children, when they feel anxious, their room becomes their safe haven, right? They don't want to come out of that room. So he started avoiding socializing, started kind of staying at home, staying in his room most of the time. So of course, he presented this story to me, and then he said something very quietly, looking down. He said, actually, you know what? I don't know who I am anymore. And that sentence stayed with me, right? It's kind of, he didn't ask me to help him improve his grades or improve his sleep or help him with his anxiety. Of course, those things are important and they needed my attention, but this question kind of made me wonder, there is something underneath all these worries and anxieties that he's been experiencing. And I think, those symptoms were masking kind of, the bigger questions, we call them existential, big questions in life. Who am I? Where do I belong? What is my purpose? What's the meaning in my, of my life? And I think he was also referring to the values. Maybe he did not develop, or did not have opportunities to develop his inner compass, right? So these are the things that stayed with me when I was kind of, after my first meeting with Alex. And I will come back to his story towards the end. So as clinical psychologist, I feel very privileged that people come and see me and my fellow colleagues at a very vulnerable place, when they are feeling their rock bottom, when they are experiencing a lot of mental health agonies, a lot of worries they go through. So I get to hear not just about the symptoms, but I also get to hear their stories. Maybe no one else that they can share that story with. So there is so much that kind of lies beneath those issues that present in the room at first, right? So we may first see anxiety, depression, this urge to, never make mistakes and be perfectionist, behavioral difficulties, or declining academic performance, right? So all these issues definitely need our attention as psychologists, right? But they are just the visible part that we are seeing. And I think there is so much deeper. The more I kind of have worked in the UK for last 20 years, and then now coming here and working in medical college, not just as a clinical psychologist, but as an educator too. I think, there is something deeper going on that sometimes it's very difficult to tap into, right? And Alex was not just one of young gentleman who was carrying all these kind of questions within him deeply, right? I think we meet so many Alexes, in our lives and in our family also. So, let's think about these couple of examples. And I see around the room, and I see there are educators who are teaching in primary school or nursery, or what you call kindergarten, or you might be teaching high school students or from university as well. I think it applies to all of us. So let's think about a child who constantly disrupts the class, right? It's easy to label that child, right? Or a teenager who withdraws and doesn't speak in the class, right? So what are the kind of, one word label that comes to your mind when you think of a disruptive child, right? Actually, I've already put that in, right? Naughty, this child needs discipline, right? Or, this teenager is shy, or sometimes we put a label from, we are very good in psychiatry and psychology. We put labels, for every symptom we have a label. We might label this young gentleman with social anxiety, right? Or social phobia, because he doesn't, talk in the class. So it's easy to put the labels on, right? But it's so difficult to go underneath, because, this behavior is visible, but what is happening underneath, what's happening at his house, or, within the class, maybe the child who's constantly disrupting, he is, they also get labeled with attention seeker. And I do not like that label or this kind of term. I think it is connection seeking. Maybe nobody pays attention to him and he does not feel part of the class. And all he can do is, nudge his neighbor and disrupt him, disrupt the class, so that the teacher looks at him and says, hey, what's going on? And that's, his connection with the teacher, right? The teenager who withdraws, who doesn't speak in the class, what might be going through in his mind? Maybe, if he puts his hand up and answers the question or asks a question, he probably has been laughed at in the past, by his peers. And he does not, he's so afraid of making any mistakes, wants to be perfect. So his hand would not go up, right? So it's very difficult to know what's actually going on in their mind. Actually, when people come, a lot of people come to my clinic and they think that I can read their mind, that psychologists somehow can read people's minds. Let me tell you, it's a myth, right? We have no training in reading the minds, right? People have to talk to us. People have to tell us what's going on in their mind, right? I tell them I don't have any X-ray or MRI, right, that I can do on you, or there are no blood tests. You've got to tell me what's going on, right? So that's how, we actually call that therapy a talking therapy. I think more than talking, a listening therapy, right? So that's what goes on in my therapy room, and we ask those deeper questions. And I really like this kind of idea of iceberg, because when a person like Alex comes into my therapy room, I only see the top part. I only see the symptoms. And Alex is also aware of those symptoms only. His parents, his teachers or educators, his friends, they will all be looking at top of the iceberg, tip of the iceberg, right? And underneath, there are so many things submerged that probably Alex also doesn't know, and no one asks those questions, right? What's going on? Are you feeling safe at home? Have you had any connection, deeper connections, not, so-called friends on social media. Alex probably had thousands of those, right? But one meaningful connection, right, with his peer, not even one. He told me that, right? He did not feel connected with anyone. He actually wears a badge saying, I'm friendless and I'm okay with it, right? So, those are the people that kind of, are in our classrooms, yeah? So we actually, he actually talked about, in a way, I don't know who I am anymore. He was talking about identity and loss of purpose, right? Or he did not know what his purpose was in his life, right? So how does a human being, how did we develop an inner compass, right? This question has fascinated psychologists for many generations. And, decades of research has happened. So I'm going to talk about a little bit of jargon, and I will explain along the way. So there is a theory that I really like, and I use that a lot in my work. It's called attachment theory. So John Bowlby, he was the first one to actually do a systematic research to kind of, come up with this idea that we human beings, when we are born as babies, these tiny babies, we all have been programmed to want that connection, right? Want that social connection. We want to have that bond or attachment with our caregiver, primary caregiver. And most of the time it's mothers, but not always, right? Whoever that caregiver is. And that provides, emotional security. That provides the children or the babies to grow in a loving, compassionate environment, right? So he was the first one to talk about that. Then developmental psychologists, like Erikson, Bhuvna had a really good slide to show you the psychosocial development that happens from, again, womb to tomb, right? So these psychosocial stages, because we are social beings, right? So we need social connections. So they kind of, Erikson, and after that Marcia had built up on that theory of Erikson, that, we have kind of these, we develop our identity, we develop our values and meaning, across lifespan, right? So that's what he talked about. And then we have motivation theorists like Abraham Maslow, who talked about it. He's famous for this hierarchy of needs theory, right? So bottommost is where we need our basic essentials, food, water, shelter, clothing, all of that, right? So they studied the conditions that help people grow, people kind of, learn and flourish. So these kind of, theorists over the decades have asked different questions, but I think, they are talking about the same thing. They've come to the same conclusion that, we as human beings, we flourish when our psychological needs are met. And these are fundamental psychological needs, apart from, of course, food, water, shelter, and clothing, right? And of course, air, right? So after that, we need love. We need that connection. We need, emotional security. So those are some of the fundamental needs that need to be met in order for us to flourish, in order to kind of, for us to grow emotionally, psychologically, and physically. So that made me wonder that perhaps values are not separate, from developmental journey. Perhaps they are one of its natural outcomes. As we develop, values don't just kind of happen by accident, right? Development doesn't just happen by accident. You need those conditions to have this development, the cognitive, meaning, the way we think about things, the way we feel, emotionally, the way we control our emotions, the way we relate to each other. All these foundations are laid early in life, but they carry on, throughout our lives. So that idea changed the way I think about education, because, rather than asking how do we teach these values, we need to think about what conditions are required, what are the requirements where values will grow? Not automatically, of course, but we need to provide that environment. So I'm going to use this metaphor throughout. And when we admire this beautiful tree, what catches your attention? Fruits. Sun. Just focus on the tree. Focus on the tree. What else? The leaves, the branches, and look at that, the trunk, right? The shade it provides, right? So these are, again, the visible parts, right? But a keen gardener, what would the gardener thinks about? Roots, right? So the gardener knows that, yes, fruits are kind of, important. That's why probably he or she has planted the tree, right? But, if you want healthy fruit, wonderful, beautiful looking fruit and kind of nice tasting fruit, you need to pay attention to the roots that are invisible, right? So this I call a tree of human flourishing, right? So these are the invisible roots, but they are the most important thing for a gardener, for a keen gardener, right? So I call these roots as kind of developmental roots. So these are the kind of, these are just 4 that I have put because I don't want to make it too complicated. So 4 fundamental psychological needs that any child, all of us, it doesn't stop. We don't stop having these needs just because we are grown up, right? You probably don't know it, but all of us want these, right? Who doesn't want to feel emotionally secure and safe? So this safety is not just physical safety, it's also emotional safety. Who doesn't want a sense of belonging, right? Who doesn't want having kind of identity, who I am, right? And sense of purpose, right? So all these basic fundamental psychological needs are required, and the fruit will come, right? Naturally, it will grow. And these roots give rise to healthy human development. So let's think about that child who kind of worries about making mistakes. Maybe he thinks that if I make mistake, what will happen? People will laugh at me. And if they laugh, then I won't have any friends, right? So all that is going through in that little head of, this young child, right? So these are the psychological needs all of us need to keep in mind. Keep in mind the invisible part, right? So in our work, we ask those deeper questions sometimes, and I think educators can ask those questions too. So coming back to the developmental psychology, so this is how our development takes place, in early life. So how these needs, so that is where the kind of theory, psychosocial theory of Erikson, he talks about that each stage brings up a different need for us, a different crisis for us. When babies are born, what do they need most apart from, of course, feeding? What else do they need? Yeah? Bonding, of course, right? And, if they do not get that, and bonding, not inconsistent bonding, that, sometimes when I cry, my mommy comes, and other times, she ignores me and she's on her phone, right? And, I've seen people, mothers, young mothers, they will have the baby who's feeding, of course, and they are on their device, right? So in your kind of, early life, when you're tiny baby, you're pre-verbal, you don't have the language. Even if our primary caregiver tells us, oh, I love you, right? Just the words, right? They don't mean anything. They are pre-verbal, they don't have the language. So they look at your non-verbal, a tiny baby infant can also pick up the tone of voice, the pitch of voice, your facial expressions, and your eye contact. You know, it's the eye contact that lets them know, I see you, I love you, you know, you're my everything. You know, they feel so kind of, you know, secure, emotionally secure. And that builds the trust, that builds their template that this world is a safe place. And there are people I can rely on, right? So that template, first 5 years is very important, you know, a very important age for that baby, you know, because that is where we are laying the foundation, right? We are laying the foundation of how we are going to relate to others, to ourselves, and to the world. How are we going to, you know, develop as a human being? So if that trust doesn't build, then, you know, the baby or the child, when he's growing up or she's growing up, they will have mistrust, right? So that kind of, you know, that comes from the secure relationships. Of course, you don't need to be this helicopter parent all the time, you know, they need to explore as they grow up, but once they know that this is my safe haven, you know, this my primary caregiver is my really good kind of attachment, that bond, I can go and explore, and when I feel distress, I can come back and I will be, you know, scooped up, right? So they kind of, you know, next stage is, you know, when they grow into their childhood, middle childhood, they go to their kind of, you know, secondary school, right? Then they need that belonging, you know, when they start school. They need to know whether, you know, you accept me, whether you include me, right? Do I belong to this classroom or not, right? So that is when the educator has to kind of, you know, build that sort of, you know, of course, emotional safety has to be there, but then, you know, next, we need to start thinking about the next need, right? So then, you know, if they participate in activities, right, then the emerging value of respect comes, you know. So Sadhguru this morning was talking about his lovely teachers and how each one of them provided that environment, right, provided him with that trust, with that kind of, you know, opportunity to go and explore and maybe make mistakes, but also learn from them, right? And, you know, that is how his confidence built up, right? So then, you know, comes the most tricky stage in our lives, right? Teenage or adolescence, right? I call this a pressure cooker stage, right? So much is going on in this stage, right? Hormonal changes, your body is changing physically, right? You're kind of, you know, you feel like, oh, I don't like my body, what's happening here, right? And then it's at this stage, very stage, where you have to take a very big decision of your life, right? What do I want to do? Who do I want to become? Do I want to become a doctor, a teacher, or an engineer, or whatever, right? So that's the most important question that you need to ask yourself. And that question comes at a very tricky stage of our lives, right? And they are looking for who they are, right? And if they get good experience, again, social experience, relationships, which kind of, you know, give that young person opportunity to reflect on what they want, you know, they definitely need our guidance, and that's all we need to give as educators, as parents, right? We again don't need to interfere too much, right? Let them reflect who they are, what they want, right? And then emerges integrity, you know. Bhuvna again was talking about that lifespan sort of perspective where, you know, where you start talking about truth, and then over the years it become integrity, right? So the values don't just appear like that, right? They come gradually. They keep growing stage by stage. And then we become young adults and we join university, right? It's very exciting time when we join the university, right? Because we then think, you know, when we were teenagers, we were neither a child nor an adult. We were kind of in between, right? People don't respect you, you know, if you're not adults, you know. adults, yes, they get respected. So university, we kind of feel so proud, but at the same time, what happens? Can people remember when they started their uni? Scared, right? New environment, right? I was, very good in school. Everybody knew me. And now, from this pond, small pond, I go to big ocean. My God, it's anxiety provoking, isn't it? For anyone, right? So, that is where they are now looking for purpose. So, people in higher education, that's what we need to think about and nurture, right? We need to ask questions. How can you contribute to the society, to your family, right? And I don't mean monetarily, not kind of, earning, but, how can you contribute as a citizen, as a citizen of this society, right? And, emerging value of service. So when all of this is going on, underneath, what's going on here in the developing brain, right? Bhuvna was, again, I'm going to refer to her talk because she has laid the foundation for my talk. And she was talking about socio-emotional learning, right? She was talking about EQ, emotional quotient or emotional intelligence. When do you think the foundation of socio-emotional learning is laid? Again, early years, your childhood, from your infancy to your childhood. That is when, again, the template of what am I feeling, labeling the feelings. Some children I've seen, they are 12, 15-year-old. I ask them, what brings you here? What happens when teacher scolds you? They don't have emotional literacy. They don't have words to, name their feelings, right? So that kind of emotional regulation will only come. How to control your strong emotions is the second step. First is awareness, labeling your emotions, naming your emotions, right? So Daniel Siegel says, if you name it, you can tame it, right? So they need to learn to name it first, right? So this emotional regulation, it's like, when the fan is very kind of, high, or this AC is very high, we can kind of, control the temperature. But there is no switch to control our emotions, right? We again learn this through our relationships, how our parents, how our caregivers, how our educators, teachers, they have reacted or responded in a particular situation. So we imitate that, that social learning that happens. So how, attentive you are. And we hear this ADHD term. Have you heard that? Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, right? So a lot of kids are now being diagnosed with that. It's like, it feels like an endemic of that, right? But, again, one of the factors could be not having that good enough sort of connection, social connection, and also the kind of devices that we have, digital devices, we are all the time there. And that can also contribute to developing problems with attention and self-control, impulsive behavior. And it's our repeated social experiences that strengthen our, neural networks. So neural networks, think of these neural networks. So this means like, the brain cells are called neurons, and, they talk to each other. Constantly they're talking to each other, and there are billions of them, right? Think of them as those train tracks, right? So where kind of, it will become strong connection if you carry on doing the same thing, right? So that is why there is a term called, if you use it, if you don't use it, you lose it, or use it to kind of, keep that connection. So those connections keep getting stronger and stronger, and they happen within our kind of family, within our classrooms. And relationships, all these things are not happening in isolation. They are happening in social relationships. That's why Daniel Siegel says that, our brain is a social brain, right? That's why loneliness, especially in old age, is such a difficult issue to tackle, right? We need social connection, not when we are a little baby, but, across our life. So, we have a big responsibility as educators, people who make policy for education. It's not just transferring information, knowledge, right? So now we are in the age of AI. So, it has made our lives, but our students' lives also easier, right? Everything is available on fingertips, on your fingertips. So you don't actually have to do anything. So we don't need to teach the content. ChatGPT, Gemini, all of it is doing it anyway, right? But then does that mean we are redundant, right? Yeah? Can we go home and shut the schools, right? And colleges, universities? No. Because, it's in the relationships where all these things are shaping, your relationships are shaping our brains. These little brains, developing brains, are being shaped within that relational environment, right? So it's laying the architecture that will support that developing brain later on in their life, when they will undergo stresses in the life, right? When they undergo difficult situations, difficult circumstances. So this relational safety, I think I have made a compelling argument, right? But we kind of know, all of us want evidence. All of us want proof, And one of the strongest evidence comes from the kind of big body of research that happened. Some of you may be familiar with this research with Romanian adoptees in England. And a group of researchers, Sir Rutter had, from King's College, London, had done this piece of research where they studied children who were adopted in the UK. They grew up in very horrific kind of conditions in orphanage in a communist era, in Romania. So what they found, it's a longitudinal research. And if you read the papers, they have found that early neglect, deprivation, lack of love and affection can make children vulnerable to develop problems with their learning, with their kind of, brain development, with their cognitive kind of issues, learning issues, IQ issues, social communication. They can develop what we call attachment disorders because they did not have that opportunity to have that caring, that loving, that emotionally safe environment. Right? So we were shown a video clip of, you can see the picture. It was a gut-wrenching watch, during my clinical training, we watched that. But, at the same time, this piece of research is hopeful, for me. Why am I saying that? It was hopeful because when these children were taken in, adopted in warm, loving, caring environments where they got what they wanted, those kind of, 4 development roots, they got that, some of those damages were repaired. Some of them probably not, but some of those damages were repaired. So that gives us hope, right? And it also, again, proves that our relationships matter. Not just when we are little, across lifespan. And development remains open to change. So our brain is plastic, right? It doesn't end when we are 18, right? And then you're adult, off you go, right? When, people who work in university, I want to kind of, tell them that their brain, when they come to university, they are not fully grown adult, they are physically, but their brains are still developing, right? Especially the prefrontal cortex is still developing, where, we need this part of our brain to make decisions for us, impulse control, and how do I react or respond to this situation, right? And long-term kind of decision making, emotional regulation, right? All of these things are happening again in our kind of, second window of opportunity, right? So those foundations get laid in our late adolescent to early 20s, right? So it continues. And, that is when they are asking all these big questions. Who am I? Where do I belong? And what kind of life do I want? So, please take this as a takeaway that universities are not simply places where careers are made, right? These are also places where we can still nurture those values. We can still, we can't let go of that emotional, physical safety and, belonging, sense of belonging. We need all those needs again. We need to develop that environment again, right? So quickly I will go through these two very important terms. They are technical terms that we use again in attachment theory. Attunement is when, when somebody has that kind of good connection, and it's more than kind of being present in the same room, right? It's your kind of, body language as well, not just your verbal, right? It's the experience of another person accurately noticing us, letting us know that they understand you, I see you, right? Not just I see you, but I really see you. No, I hear you, right? All of that, and I understand you. So that is what we call attunement. And, before children develop their own emotional regulation system, which again, it is developing stage by stage and throughout our early 20s, right? They need to borrow another brain who's calm, right? And we as educators, or if you're a parent, you are those calm brains, right? And we call that co-regulation. When this little one or even a teenager hasn't developed that emotional regulation, it's, my job as an adult, whether I'm a parent or I'm an educator, it's my job to, lend that calmness to this young one, so that they learn. And we always keep talking about we have to be role models. So this is where this role modeling comes. How you are reacting, how is your body language, when you're sitting in a meeting and you're surrounded by youngsters, who are always observing us, looking at our body language, how do we interact with other adults in the room, right? So all of that is happening. And, these repeated moments of attunement and co-regulation is the one that lays the foundation for that developing brain, right? So just to bring everything together, to summarize, we need our relationships, values are not learned, in those kind of teaching sessions, right? Children will remember kind of, how you made them feel. Maybe they don't remember your name or the content of the session, but they will never forget how you made them feel, right? So, they are gradually absorbed through relationships and repeated experiences. Those neural networks are getting kind of, laid and getting stronger. So relationships create a feeling of safety, and also, this relational safety. If I feel safe in this relationship, then I feel like I belong here, I matter here, right? And this belonging supports the development of identity, where I know who I am, right? And identity will open the doors to purpose, right? So when I know who I am, then I will probably explore and find out, what do I want to do? How do I want to contribute to society, to the wider kind of nation and the world, right? So I think, traditionally we have thought about that these values can be taught, right? But developmental psychology or view tells us that, we need to create those conditions. So our role is not just to teach them, but to be a role model and also cultivate those conditions, right? So the influence of educators is not just when they are in your classroom, it's across their lifespan. They will still remember how you made them feel and how you fulfilled their psychological needs, right? So every interaction in the classroom or in the corridors of your kind of, if it's a residential school, in your hostel, right? Every interaction matters. Every classroom can shape young person's identity, and every conversation can influence belonging, and early learning experiences can help young people discover purpose, right? So how are we doing with time? I think I'll skip this exercise. Maybe another time we can do this like a workshop, right? So I didn't want to just come with so many technical terms and theories, right? I want to leave you with some practical strategies. And these are not just kind of, this is not an exhaustive list that I'm going to show, but, you already may have all the strategies, and you are doing, you're teaching those values by walking the talk, I guess, right? But if you need any strategies, and again, thinking about the developmental needs at each stage, our approach should change. The way we teach or educate, or the way we kind of, converse and communicate with our young kind of, students, it needs to change, right? So maybe in preschool, having a warm routines, remembering, when I was training as a clinical psychologist, I used to go for school observations, and first thing in the morning, if you go to a kindergarten or primary school, the teacher is standing, that happens in the UK, I don't know if it happens in your countries. The teacher is standing by the gate, and she's welcoming each child, not just one day, every day, especially when there are new students, and you call them by their name, right? And they don't want to leave the hand of their, parent when, who's come to drop them. But when teacher, goes on to their level and say, hello, Ryan, how are you? How are you in this morning? Have you had breakfast? Ryan feels, oh, teacher remembers my name. I just joined yesterday, right? Feels like I belong here, right? So, having that routine every day helps the child to feel safe, to feel like they belong, right? Emotional coaching, maybe stories, pretend play. Then primary school comes, and you need to do more cooperative learning. They need to start sharing things with each other, right? And, classroom responsibilities, modeling will help, peer activities. And secondary school, get them into a habit of reflective journaling. Reflect on, when you did that act of kindness, how did that make you feel inside, right? So give them ethical dilemmas as they are growing into their early adolescent or late adolescent age. What will you do in that situation? And when it comes to university level, service learning projects, because that is where they are building their sense of kind of purpose, they're finding meaning. So that is when you need to be a guide, because then didactic teaching won't work, and they will call you out. If you're not walking the talk, they will say, oh, they're just kind of, doing the lip service. They're not doing it themselves, right? They are always observing us, right? So let me return back to Alex, right? He didn't lack any intelligence or knowledge, right? He certainly knew what was right and what was wrong, right? He was asking bigger question. And that wasn't kind of, my piece of work to do with him. My job was to cultivate those conditions where we can explore, because I believe that each person, each child, each youngster or teenager, young adult, they know that, right? They have. It's not like we have to teach them, we have to give them knowledge, right? They have that knowledge. We just need to provide that condition to tap into it. They can tap into it themselves, right? We just need to be present. So like an educator, I said, my job as a clinical psychologist, when I first trained, I thought my job was to fix people's problems, right? I was quite naive when I first became a therapist and psychologist. But now, more I worked, 20 years later, 22 or 3 years, I can't remember. Now I know that that is not my job, right? My job is to create that warmth, create that, again, emotional safety, that relational safety, where we can explore these difficult questions, right? So you know that there are these therapy chatbots. So AI is doing therapy also, right? So what is different that I bring to the room, right? That's how psychologists also, this AI is actually, making our jobs, we have to think twice, what do I bring different to ChatGPT, right? Leave you with final thoughts that rather than asking what values will I teach today, instead ask, what roots will I nurture today? What am I taking into the classroom, as an educator, right? And I leave you with picture of this tree of human flourishing, that, work of education is not to attach the fruit, to the tree. It's to tend to the roots, right? Enrich the soil and tend to the roots, right? Because if we nurture the roots, the fruit will follow. Thank you very much. Do we have time? Or keep it later? We can keep it later.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next speaker is Dr. Kimberly Schonert Reichl, an applied developmental psychologist and the NoVo Foundation Endowed Chair in Social and Emotional Learning at the University of Illinois, Chicago, USA. An internationally renowned expert in social and emotional learning and mindfulness in education, Dr. Kimberly has dedicated her career to advancing research and practice that helps children develop empathy, resilience, self-awareness, and emotional well-being. Her work has also shaped global education policies through collaborations with organizations such as UNESCO and the OECD. Although she is unable to join us in person today, she has shared a special video message on the topic, Promotion of Positive Human Values. May we have the video, please?
The first thing I wanted to start with is some of the recent science that's really come out showing that children now are much more capable of these positive human qualities like empathy, compassion, altruism, much earlier than we ever thought. For example, there's research coming out now showing that even children as young as 2.5 years of age can behave altruistically. Felix Wernicke and Michael Tomasello has shown that in a number of experimental tasks where they ask toddlers to help someone, to sort of set up a situation where they have to help someone and behave altruistically, meaning they're helping without any expectation of reward to someone they don't know, is that over and over again these young children will behave in a caring way, in an altruistic way, and help someone. Dr. Keltner, out of the Greater Good Science Center in University of California, Berkeley, has also written a book called Born to Be Good, really showing that now the science really shows that these qualities should be cultivated, not just taught, that because there's something naturally, instinctually, that we are born to help others and care for others. So I think the number one thing I have to say to really take root is to have this mindset that children have this capacity to be helpful and caring. And so if teachers see children that way. The second thing I think it's really important to know is that relationships are at the very core. That children, when they see, when they have an adult around them in an educational setting, at home as well, you know, because I'm sure a lot of people are at home, when they see that adult who truly is caring, that's when they can themselves behave in a caring way. You know, so it's number one, role modeling it, of course, but also really appreciating it. You know, so much, and again, as a classroom teacher, you know, you begin and you focus on the negative behaviors. You know, you try and get the kids to pay attention, to, you know, stop making noise or bothering their neighbor. And we tend to focus on that, and we don't really elevate and appreciate when we see the kind of acts that children do. And so I think that's the second thing, besides the relationships, is to be kind of a detective, to find what are those kind acts that children are doing. And then when you see it, to point that out, you know, to say, Sarah, oh, I saw you being so helpful to your classmate. You picked up their pencil and you smiled and gave it back to them. You're such a caring person. So that's the other thing that teachers could do, just not notice those behaviors, but also instead of said that was nice or good job, but to really recognize it and say, you know, you identify them as a caring person who's so kind. So, you know, over the decades, we found that how important it is to recognize these behaviors. And the other thing I'm just going to talk a bit about is how do we create those caring relationships with students? They are the foundation. They are the core. We know, for example, I do research in the field of social and emotional learning, and we often talk about that social and emotional learning is not another thing on the plate. It is the plate. It's the foundation. And I want to talk about a study we did several years ago it was a relatively simple study. We just asked students to list 3 things that teachers do to show they care. And what do teachers do to show they don't care? And we asked students at a high school, you know, secondary school students, and we looked at students who were both low achieving, at risk for high school dropout, those who were average, those on the honor roll who were high achieving. And they said the same thing across all. The number one thing that teachers do to show they care is when they say hi to them in the hallway by their name.
Oh,
you know, the teachers, it was a simple thing, but it's almost like I'm seen, I'm heard. And so, you know, if I had to just say, what are sort of the foundations of cultivating this positive human qualities? It's those caring relationships. It's that setting the caring context where we all can feel safe, supported, where our natural tendencies of being compassionate and kind can really grow.
What would you say, like, how do we need to fine tune and to adjust our strategy as educators when trying to nurture these values or teach them?
That's a great question. You know, as a developmental psychologist, of course, I study the development of these things, of how like empathy develops and compassion develops. And so it's really important to figure out how to cultivate them across the lifespan. I will say there's a couple of things that remains constant. One is to be a role model, that children watch what we do and not always listen to what we say. They're keen observers, even, you know, infants watch carefully, you know, and so the children really pay attention to how we're dealing with things and how we respond to others. So I think, you know, across the lifespan, children will be noticing that. And anyone who's been around early adolescence know that they will right away talk about hypocrisy. If they see a teacher saying one thing and doing another, they will call you on it. Our own children as well. So we really have to pay attention to how we behave, how we act, and that we model what we want them to do in an authentic way. Yes. I think it's really clear. I think young children, of course, need very concrete things, you know, to do, you know, acts of kindness. It might be that they, you know, if we want to cultivate empathy, that we really should recognize it, especially young. It's really interesting, the development of empathy, that young children will first, they have well, actually, I just tell you the roots of human empathy. That there's research showing that in the first 24 hours of birth, empathy develops, is already there. They find that when an infant hears another infant crying, they will start crying, but they won't start crying to their own recording of their own crying. So right away, there's this capacity to be attuned to others' emotions and others' feelings. And so, early on, what's really critical is to help children identify emotions in others and in themselves. Those are kind of very basic skills they need to talk about how, to label their emotions. I love Dr. Dan Siegel. He talks about this idea, to name it is to tame it, and how important it is to identify emotions and how we're feeling, how we're feeling, that in fact will, just by identifying that emotion will help to first help us regulate it. So we know early on those are really important behaviors for them to have their own emotion regulation, to be able to start understanding others. As children get older, we now have to start thinking about how we are in relationships, peer relationships for others, and having very concrete experiences of doing that and showing how we work together. And then as they move into adolescence, what becomes really important is their own identity and a sense of purpose, what they want to do in the world. And so we need to give them opportunities in which they can help make the world a better place in explicit ways. I think all children can work on this, but I think especially in adolescence, developing that sense of purpose, that sense of connection, that sense of feeling like you matter in the world. And so that, and throughout all of it, the idea of reflecting. So let's say you have young adolescents go and engage in some community improvement, or go out and come together and work on something, to come back and reflect. How did that make you feel? How did you think it made the people that you influenced feel? And so as they get older, to have that reflection, they have that more abstract ability. But I think throughout, another constant I want to say, besides the role model, is that we need to really talk and listen to children and hear what they have to say. Because when we listen to them, when we have them have a say in what we're going to do, they will then enact it. I'll talk about one study we did that was really fun, and it could do it at any age group, really, but I think it works. You could do it in upper elementary and high school. We did a study where we wanted to see about how kindness, doing acts of kindness, influences the classroom context as well as happiness. Learning from previous research by Sonia Lyubomirsky and others, who found that adults who engage in acts of kindness improve their well-being, increase their happiness, and decrease their depression. So we had 4th and 5th grade students, 11 and 12-year-olds, go out for 4 weeks. We went into the classrooms and we first took measures of their happiness and depression, and then also asked them how much they'd like to be in school activities with each other, how much they'd like to eat one another in the classroom. And we had comparison classrooms. But once a week, we told them to do 3 acts of kindness for others. It could be at home, it could be at school, but remember what they did, because we wanted them to write it down. So for 4 weeks, just every week, they just did 3 acts of kindness. The other comparison group were just talking about where places they went. But what we found was fascinating. Just after 4 weeks, just 3 acts of kindness each week, where the children got to choose what they did for their acts of kindness, we found the children who did the acts of kindness compared to the kids who did not only increased in their happiness and well-being, it also created a more cohesive classroom environment. Kids liked one another more in their classroom just by engaging in this simple acts of kindness. So again, talk about the developmental progression, I think all along, to give children some agency to engage in acts of kindness, but in an intentional way, can really have huge effects on them. And then one last thing I'm just going to say, people might say, oh, okay, I can't do this in my classroom. I have too much time to get through the academics. I can't, it's 3 acts of kindness. So if I start doing this kinds of things in my classroom, the research is very clear that pro-social behaviors, helping, sharing, caring, cooperating, is a better predictor of academic achievement than standardized test scores. There's research now showing that, for example, that they followed students from 3rd grade all the way to 8th grade, and found that students' pro-social behaviors were a better predictor of their 8th grade academic achievement than was 3rd grade academic achievement. So again, I just want to make the case that, so these nice to have, like a lot of people say, yeah, kindness, compassion, nice to have, but it's so critical for success both in school and in life.
It's wonderful, and not to see them isolated, but as that it supports the other. One actually really supports the other. It's kind of like a hack, because so much pressure and emphasis is being placed on academic performance within our educational institutions, right? It's been there from the inception of it. And so it's always at the forefront of teachers' minds because they have so many metrics and so many, boxes that have to be ticked to show that they're doing their job well as a teacher. And they always equate it to academic side of things. And then the whole emotional, social aspect is neglected. But it's so nice that we're having this research where it's showing you that the two are connected. And in fact, this academic performance really thrives off this social emotional development within the student. Would you say that's because when they are, they develop these attributes and these qualities, would you say it's because they have greater love for themselves and then their self-esteem, and would you say the nervous system is more relaxed and then the receptivity to academic work opens and their ability to absorb and assimilate information improves?
Yes, I think you're right. I love the idea of looking at the sort of physiology or the neurobiology to say it reduces their stress. I've done some research where we actually look at cortisol, the stress hormone, and find that a mindfulness intervention, a social emotional learning program, actually could improve their stress physiology and reduce their stress. So I totally agree with you. I think, I also feel that if think about environments where you've really thrived. There are places where people were kind and caring to one another. And when we're feeling safe, supported, loved, cared for, we can learn our best. We can do you're right. The stress, you're sort of that prefrontal cortex, which controls our executive functions. And when we're on high alert, our amygdala is taking over. And, but when you're in a place that is caring and kind, and where everybody actually helps one another, so the sort of pro-social foundations of academic achievement, where you really show that when you're in an environment where everyone is helping one another, where you could turn to your friend and go, what did the teacher just say? I didn't hear the assignment. And the person tells you right away, oh, or the person says, or you're saying, I'm so confused about this math problem. And your classmate comes over and goes, well, I'll help you figure it out. Of course, we learn more, we do better academically. It's a more inclusive environment. And so I think, I love it that you call it a hack. If you really want to promote students' academic achievement, focus on promoting their pro-social skills and development. Create a classroom in which caring and support is at the core. That's how you're going to get all the students.
How important, and then what would you say would be if we had an ideal world, a nice framework that could be rolled out to support, the teachers, and then also the admin staff, everybody within that ecosystem of the educational institution?
Well, it's so interesting you bring this up, Dr. Sarah, because I really have, in the last probably 10 to 15 years of my career have really begun to focus more on the adults than the cultivation of the students. I've really learned so much that it really has to start with the adults, and that sometimes we're misguided if we just bring in a whole bunch of programs into schools for the children without ever addressing the adults. I have to say, one of my studies that has gotten a lot of attention with one of my colleagues, Ava Oberle, was where we looked at stress contagion in the classroom. And what we did is we went to 4th to 7th grade classrooms, 10 to 13-year-old classrooms, and we had teachers complete a measure of their own stress and burnout. Then for the students, and this is when I was talking about cortisol, we went and collected cortisol from the students. We wanted to look at their stress physiology. We wanted to look at how stressed they were, but under the skin. So cortisol is a stress hormone. It's a healthy pattern, peaks a half an hour after awakening, declines the rest of the day. If you're really stressed, your cortisol is really high. And to get cortisol, you have to get spit. So basically tested in saliva. And just so you know, these students loved participating in the study because they loved giving us their spit. Like they truly thought it was the coolest thing ever to be able to participate in a study giving us their spit. And then when we analyzed the data, what was fascinating, those classrooms in which teachers had reported the highest levels of stress and burnout had students with the highest levels of cortisol. Mm-hmm. And so the idea that stress is contagious. Now, we don't know if the children were coming into the classroom with higher levels of stress from their home environments, their communities, and the teachers were, because of their high empathy, were catching it. If teachers were really kind of stressed out, maybe because their administration, everybody was all stressed out, they were catching it. But what it means to us, and what it taught me so much, is that any effort to help cultivate positive human qualities like empathy, compassion in students has to begin with the adults. It has to focus on the context and create that that environment that is the one you want to see in the classroom. It has to mirror that. Some of the work I'm doing right now is with Peter Senge and Meta Bowl on compassionate systems that really talk about how do you create compassionate systems at the leadership level. So we really need to have more intentional efforts to really focus on and just focus on the adult leaders. I feel it also starts with the school directors or the principals, or who we have to create that, and of course the larger system of the society. Okay, I'm just going to go to that too. but I'm really convinced that we have to really focus. We have to. If you told me in the ideal world, Kim, where would you start? I would say start with the adults and creating the system that they want to see. Because once they feel well, I mean, think about it. The teachers go into the classrooms and students are paying attention to them. And there's now research showing that we have a measure of students' ratings of teacher stress or well-being, emotional competence. And we compared it, there's a study that compared it to teachers' own reports. Kids are spot on. They know exactly how teachers are feeling. Teachers can't mask it, just have to tell you.
Absolutely, because they're so attuned. They become an ecosystem. There was a last question we have here, which is, if you could leave our educators at the conference who are serious about nourishing the future generations to become empathic individuals with one message about nurturing values consistently as children grow, what would you want them to carry with them?
It's such an important question, and it's hard to say one thing. So, I'm going to go back to, working in this school where I had lots of challenging students, because I think I really like to think that those students who come in front of you who are the most challenging are there to teach you something and to help you be a better person. I truly believe. I try and look at anyone who comes in my life who challenges me. I'm like, okay, I'm here to learn. There's a learning for me here. And so I think for me, it would be with this notion that every child in front of you comes in with a gift in terms of who they're going to be in the world, and also vulnerable. And our job is really to figure out how to help that gift surface, that sense of who they are and who they should be valued. And so I think that idea of just having teachers find that gift, and I'll leave with a very practical strategy. I'm going to give people some homework to do, and we'll see if they all can do it. I don't know, with whenever you're teaching. So it's called the 2x10. So basically, what you should do is you should find a student who is challenging to you. I also use the term annoying, but I'll say challenging. And what you should do for the next, and you can do this if school hasn't started, depending when you go back, is for 10 days in a row, when you see that student, is have a positive conversation with them. And it might be that you go in and you talk about their new haircut or the shoes they're wearing or what movie they saw last. But try over 10 days to have just a different reframing of that conversation, because you're probably used to saying to them not so nice, more negative things. So, and I can tell you right now, it's based on research in which you say, they found that just by having that change in how you see that student, changes the relationship and improves that student's motivation. So anyway, so that's the two things: gift, find that gift, and take on the homework of finding that challenging student and having a positive conversation.
Wow, thank you so much. They're wonderful, wonderful strategies. So on behalf of the One World, One Family mission and the Sri Sathya Sai University of Human Excellence, we want to just thank you again for being here with us, and all of your knowledge that you've shared with us remains in our heart, and hopefully it translates into our actions through our hands and our thought, our words and our deeds. Thank you so much, Dr. Kimberly.
Oh, it's been my pleasure, Dr. Sarah. It's been truly an honor to be here with everyone today and to just share some of this. But I do feel that there's, so much more work to be done. So I'm so grateful that you have this type of conference that talks about these important topics. So I'm just so grateful and honored to have been invited to speak.
Thank you so much.
I now invite Ms. Maria Raiti, a social communicator, educator, and researcher from Argentina, whose work focuses on human values, free play, and holistic child development. With postgraduate studies in generative dialogue and extensive experience in human values education, she has designed innovative educational strategies that promote creativity, authentic relationships, and holistic growth. As a researcher, writer, speaker, and advisor, she works to bridge theory and practice, developing learning resources that respond to the evolving needs of children and educators. Today, she will be sharing her insights on the topic, Playful Approaches to Nurturing Values.
Namaste. Good afternoon. I'm so thrilled, so happy to be here, and I'm honored. Thank you for the kind introduction. And I really would love to meet you all, but due to time restrictions, we will do it all together. And we will wake up a little bit also. So to the count of 3, please kindly say out loud your name, all together, okay? Okay, let's do it. So 3, 2, 1. That was beautiful, but I think we can do it even better. So please do stand up. Yes, please, let's move a little bit so we wake up. Now let's do it again, and let's us all make present in this incredible conference and the important theme we are discussing, okay? So here we go. 3, 2, 1. Oh, that was beautiful. Thank you very much. Now I would like to tell you a little bit about myself. I was born in the Andes Mountains. I grew up at the Atomic Center in Bariloche, where we also have the Balseiro Institute. It's a world-class center for studying nuclear physics and nuclear engineering for free. So I grew up playing around a nuclear school reactor. Since we were far away from town, we had our own grocery store, our kindergarten, our cinema club, and of course, a dancing hall, which was called the Crazy Electron. Isn't that an amazing name for a dancing hall at an atomic center? So when I say the words electron and atomic, what image comes to your mind? Please tell me. Yeah? Yeah, an atom, but the image, that pictures in your mind, what image is that? Yeah, exactly, that thing, right? Like this, isn't it? Yeah, that is it. Yeah, and you know, something similar has happened to me in my journey as an educator. Like at the first experiences, I thought of myself in the center. Yeah, I was so young. So I was teacher-centered, okay? Then I realized, no, this is not working as I thought, so I shifted towards child-centered, and maybe some of you have gone through the same journey. Then I thought, no, this is a problem too, because children, if you are only child-centered, oh, they get so spoiled. I mean, you really need to also set boundaries and limits. You cannot only be child-centered, because the child becomes a queen. They do not deserve become kings and queens when they are only 5 years old. right? So I shifted to another idea, which would be human-centered. Oh, this sounds so beautiful, right? It's a beautiful idea. But then, even though, I mean, human-centered, I was satisfied with that idea, but still something was missing. Then I saw how is a real atom by quantum physics. How can I set play for the video? This is a video. It should move. Ah, here, maybe? No. We'll be patient. If not, you'll have to imagine it, okay? This was a video, but now it's a fixed picture. Okay, because it's really striking to see how a real atom looks like. That's why I want you to see the video. We'll try to get it later if we cannot do it now. It's constantly changing, you know? These white areas, they reflect the higher possibility clouds where you might find an electron, but actually it's constantly changing depending on energy charge, on the surroundings. It's three-dimensional, not at all, you know, a solar system-like experience, you know, like these ones, okay? So I really think this metaphor and the quantum perspective of atoms and electrons can really, really help us to understand the educational process in a way deeper way. So what would a quantum education look like? Let's explore that. And let me tell you, play science has a lot to offer us in exploring the answers, the possible answers for this question. Play emerges in relational fields. Oh, so much has been said already about relation, right? So this is just adding up to what my colleagues have said earlier in the morning and also right now. So play emerges in relational fields and looks a lot like a dynamic, responsive, flowing quantum atom. Oh, how I wish we can see that video. Let's play. Okay, let's do some activity. Let's refresh ourselves. First of all, having a personal experience, and then we will go onwards to see more nuance and theoretical aspects of play, okay? So I have a proposal for you. Think of a situation on which you'd like to gain clarity. Think of it and write it down on a paper, please. You got it? The first situation that comes to your mind, just any situation, yeah? And write maybe 2 or 3 words. You know the situation, okay? So just write it. You got it, please? Yes, are you ready? Or you don't have what to, do you have something to write on? If you do not have, you can just imagine and write it, you know, on an imaginary paper with your finger. But everybody has something to write? Are you ready? Yes? You have your situation? Okay. Now put the paper on your chair. Stand up, put the paper on your chair, and sit on top of it. Come on. Come on, put that situation and sit on top of it. So you write your situation. I don't see you moving. You're supposed to write, to stand up, put that situation on your chair, and sit on top of it. Come on, do it. Dare to play a little bit. Come on, let's move. Because that way, you know, we are bringing our bodies. We are coming down. We have listened to so many wonderful talks today. Yeah, but now we have to, you know, bring a little bit our body also into action, okay? Now, we don't have windows here, so I would just suggest that you close your eyes for a second and picture in your mind a window, and imagine you're sitting next to that window, and allow a recent playful memory come to your mind, or it might be also from your childhood. Any playful memory will do. Just breathe, feel your body, imagine you are looking out that window. Get into the aliveness of those memories by daydreaming a little bit. What are you doing? How does it feel, this memory you are remembering? What sensations come to you? Slowly, pay attention to your breathing and come back to this room. And let's play for a little bit. In pairs, please, do share for 2 minutes by clock your memory, as detailed as you can, with your neighbor, okay? Your partner will only listen. Your partner will be your safe harbor, where you can anchor that memory. And you will just open up to listening and make notes of what you see. Pay attention to these verbs. You see, you feel, or you perceive. You do not interrupt. You do not give advice. You do not judge. You are just there for listening. You are a human resonator, where that person that is talking to you can hear to him or herself in a better, deeper way, because you are there for them. Your ears are there for them, okay? Shall we try? I will measure the time. Then in 1 minute, sharp, by clock, okay? The listener will give feedback. And you will only say, when you said such and such thing, I saw, or I felt, or I perceived. You just give feedback of what your body was able to capture, the complementary information that can be of service for the person that presented the memory. Okay? You offer a safe space. You cannot make any interpretation. You cannot give advice nor judge. Now, I know it's so tempting to give advice, or just, express your own opinions about what you heard. So if it happens so, it's okay, it's natural, you want to do that. But the person who spoke can tell you, wait, you are judging me. Or wait, you are giving your opinion. I mean, I do not need your opinion. I need to listen to my own self in a deeper, better way. Okay? Do you dare to try? Okay, let's go then. And lastly, we will use 30 seconds where you both will stay in an introspective silence, and if you wish, you can take notes or draw your emerging ideas. Then we will shift turns and repeat. So, let's go. Any questions? You got it? You want this, I feel, I see, I perceive, okay? Those are the 3 verbs. Any questions? Okay, let's go. I will measure time for you. Do you have your partner? Are we uneven numbers? Please tell me if we have uneven numbers, then I can listen to any one of you. Hold on for a second, please. Hold on. I need everybody to have a partner. Do you all have a partner? Please reassure me, yeah? Okay, let's go. Wait a second. Need any help?
No, it's fine. It's wonderful.
Fine.
It's very exciting.
Have you shared your playful memory already?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Telling you the time. You're okay. You can go on. The first one. Present for 2 minutes. Yeah, you can go on. 30 more seconds. Okay. Now the person that has been listening, please give generative feedback using these words. I saw, I felt, I perceived for 1 minute. Here we go. Come on. Did you share? Oh, I'm dying to know your playful memories. Did you share with each other? Please do dare to share. Yes, very beautiful. Ten seconds. Okay, silence. Everyone, just take 30 seconds to take notes or remain silent, okay, before we shift turns. And here we go. Now you shift turns, and the person who spoke listens, and the person who listens speaks. Come on. Ten seconds. And the person who was listening now can give generative feedback. Don't forget to use the verbs I saw, I felt, I perceived. Come on. 10 seconds. Okay, now you can take notes in silence for yourself. Maybe you can draw or just remain silent if you have no notes. 30 seconds silence. Okay. Now, please do pick the paper that you placed on your seat. Read it to yourself and consider. Okay? What resources, hopes, and insights bring my playful memories into this situation that is challenging to me? Is this situation, if this situation were a game, what game would it be? Give it a thought. This situation you would like to gain clarity. Take a few moments just for yourself and reflect on that. Is there any connection between your playful memories and resources or insights or hopes that can reformulate your challenging situation? The playful memory that came to you? Yes. If it brings any, what you shared while you were in dialogue with your partner, does it bring, it doesn't have to, but maybe it can bring any hope or hidden resources or insights that could apply to your challenging situation. It might not come right now, the answer, but you can keep the question open, and maybe later you can find something, some relation or not. But you can keep the question, if this situation were a game, the challenging situation, if the challenging situation for me were a game, what game would it be? You can ask that question to yourself. That's actually what children do all the time. And they are so engaged and determined and perseverant in playing. Sometimes we think about children playing as an idealized imaginary, but children are putting their whole selves into it. And they really do it because they are so committed for development, you know. They need to grow up. That's why they play so hard. And we can also recover that for our own grown-up lives. So just consider what you discovered, or maybe just keep the question for yourself, and maybe later on some new ideas may emerge. So what do we actually mean by play from a play science perspective? The science is clear. Play promotes cognitive, social, emotional, and physical health across all ages. As our beloved Narasimhamurthy said today, I stay so young because I play. Did you hear that? Oh, I was so happy to hear that. Research suggests that play is a biological necessity for survival, even as important as feeding and sleeping. But the fact is, if we do not play, we do not die in 2 or 7 days. But we do lose our aliveness. That's why researchers say that the opposite of play is not work. The opposite of play is depression, said by Dr. Stuart Brown. So we are wired to play. Play shapes the brain, builds resilience, and fuels human potential. How can we identify play? Because it's not games. Games are part of play, but play is a biological function that has over 200 million years pervasiveness in many species, and also, I mean, when something is so pervasive and so old, it must have a biological function, okay? So when we talk about play, it's not only about games, right? Play is an activity, is a state. It's not, I'm sorry, it's not a specific activity, it's an inner state into which you can enter, where it's voluntary, play is voluntary, you enter into play by your own will. You lose the sense of time and space because they get suspended. It's apparently purposeless. You cannot force outcomes from the play engagement, right? That's why we have to rethink the relationship between play and education, because in education we are so focused on outcomes, right? So it is one step removed from reality. It brings a diminished ego and self-consciousness, which allows us to take risks and also allows us to do a little bit silly things without feeling shame. This is the open door for creativity and for the exchange of resources. Genetic resources, technological resources, economical resources, cultural resources. And play is self-ruled. This is also highly important related to education. Every player, every person that enters the playful state needs to feel that is an active participant in the rules that rule the game, okay? That coordinate that game. So how is real play relevant in education for nurturing values? Well, play is the uppermost social glue we can find. So play is really glue for social bonding. Play fosters creativity. I mean, we can say a lot of things about each one of these, but if you are curious, we can talk about that later. So play brings a sense of joy and aliveness, and play allows us to deal with uncertainty. This is very important for us humans because we live in highly complex societies that expose us constantly to the uncertainty. So this is one of my ideas of research. We do not play to learn because playing is the real important function, so we learn to be able to play in more complex and multi-layered ways. But when I say play, I'm not meaning a childish activity, right? I'm meaning this aliveness, this social bonding, this openness to creativity and the ability to face uncertainty. That's what I'm meaning when I'm talking about play. So we really need to learn to be able to be better players, okay, to survive as a society. Because as we mature, we need to keep playing in more complex and challenging ways to be healthy and thriving. I don't know if you're aware of the results of this global flourishing study, Harvard. The results came last month. This is a 5 years long study, the largest study on human flourishing, over 200,000 participants, 22 countries, over 100 researchers, and it was done for over 5 years. The results are here, and the higher results do look a lot like recess. So let's read them. The first one, and most important, 22%, all around the globe, 22 countries, 200,000 participants, is laughing with other students. Okay? Next one, a sense of playfulness. Next one, activities that strengthen your social relationship. Next one, I love this one, teachers' incorporation of humor in class. You can check it, it's awesome, it's really incredible, this research, and you can check it, there are the resources. The data shows that elements intrinsic to play, such as shared laughter, a sense of playfulness, yield the highest increases in flourishing. It also shows that young adults are struggling. This research, this piece of research shows what has been said all day today, right? Our youngsters are struggling. To me, this suggests that play is endangered. We as educators can make a real difference in preserving it, along with the mental and physical health of our children. I mean, we have schools, right? We have students at schools. Play is endangered. Play is what allows us to become truly human. Why don't we start a revolution of human values, a revolution, and transform our schools in places where play can flourish? Isn't that an awesome idea? Yeah, let's do that. Isn't play just amazing? Yes, but play won't show up in your class just because you included it in your lesson plan. No, it won't happen like that. It behaves like a little wild fox. So how does the playful state actually look like in education? I will bring 3 short, sweet examples for early childhood, primary school, and secondary school, and then I will present a longer case study for universities because I think it's so relevant for our audience today. So this happened in my own parent and child free play setting. There were 2 little children, Sophie and Manu. They were 24 months old each. Sophie was non-verbal. Oh. Okay. So Sophie was nonverbal. She had a highly structured play. She had never interacted with another child in the play group. And Manu was the most brilliant child in the group. And his life mission was to annoy Sophie. He wanted to sit on the bench he was sitting. He would grab her food and take it for himself. He would destroy the block towers she was building. And one incredible day, he decided to start a persecution game with her. She noticed he was coming and started speeding up. And Manu's mother, who knew him and she thought he was a bad behaved little toddler, wanted to stop him. And now picture this in slow motion. Like Manu is following Sophie. Sophie is for the first time in her life having notion that there is a peer that is following her and the mother wants to stop him, and I tell her, wait, and Manu grabs her and brings her from the neck towards himself and kisses her on the cheek. She smiles for the first time having a social interaction with a peer, touches her cheek, and looks into his eyes. I mean, what would have we lost if we would have stopped Manu because he was misbehaving, right? So this is so important. From early childhood onward, we can protect and foster free, real play in children. We can trust the play intelligence. Oh, these stories are amazing. I'm sorry I'm not going to be able to tell you all. But in childhood, it's so important that we become the lesson we want to be. And in teenage, please do hold on to your students. Do not give up on your students, even when they do give up on themselves. I must tell this one. I mean, this 16 years old, he was a dropout. He found another school. He had tagged the entire walls with 3 letters with permanent marker. The headmistress called him and said, what is this? And he said, oh, those letters represent my life philosophy. She got curious. She asked him about why it was important for him, etc., etc., etc. He got so engaged. And suddenly the headmistress said, how can we support you in your art? That young man, 16-year-old, came out of school, sat in his mother's car. This is a real life story. And he said, today, for the first time in my life, I felt seen at school. This is an incredible story. And they are made of not pre-planned events. It's just being able to respond to what is emerging in our schools or in our educational interactions. So we offer a safe space. We say yes what emerges and what is present there. And we stay curious. Instead of prejudging what's going on, we just think, what's going on with Manu? Why has he made his life mission to annoy Sophie? We stay curious. And regarding university level, there is a piece of research at the Universidad Pedagógica Morelos where this indigenous girl thought about quitting her studies for becoming a teacher. She felt her language was not seen, and she tried to make herself invisible. Meet Aurora. Due to the intentional, because the other three examples are just, random situations that happen in everyday life in educational fields, this one was pre-planned, and you as educators in the university can do it too. She entered the university, sitting quietly at the back, she did her best to be not seen. There are many factors here, social factors, and including colonizational values, how we think education, how is the Latin American society structured around learning. But due to the support of her teachers and peers, she engaged into metacognition, into self-reflection, into self-narration. She re-narrated her own story. She broke free from her own attributed identity. And remember her, so little, so invisible? This is her. This is her speaking for national television. She transformed her reality by becoming a scholar for indigenous populations and speaking publicly even on national TV programs to reclaim her culture. So I think this is, how is this related to play? Remember the 3 S? Well, Aurora was given a safe space. They said yes to what was happening. They said, okay, you are sitting there in the back trying to be invisible, and they stayed curious about her. She got curious about her own past and about her future possibilities. And I think this is so inspiring, and sometimes we enter education thinking about a beautiful trip to the seaside, but the road is cut, and we end up in the mountains. We do not have the necessary resources, and it's everything so challenging. But sometimes, if we are lucky enough to hold on to our passion, to our purpose, we reach at the top of the mountain the teacher of teachers who tells us, well, you mean we just do the boogie-googie and turn ourselves around, and that's what it's all about. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that engaging session, ma'am. Our last speaker for the day is Dr. Sara Mashru, a holistic psychotherapist, educator, and human values education facilitator from the UAE. With a doctorate in biochemistry and over 18 years of experience in psychotherapy, coaching, and holistic education, Dr. Sara brings together evidence-based science and emotional well-being. She has delivered keynote addresses and workshops at international forums, including the United Nations National Symposium in London, and has spent more than 2 decades training educators in human values education. Today, she will share her insights on the topic, "We Teach Who We Are," exploring how an educator's inner transformation profoundly shapes the learning experience of every child. May I now invite Dr. Sara Mashru to address the gathering.
So, good afternoon, everyone. It's lovely to be here with you all, and thank you to the organizing committee for this wonderful opportunity. It's both a pleasure and an honor to be with like-minded individuals that are so passionate about values, education, and transformation. I just want to commend you all because you've been sitting for such a long time and staying awake, and I will try to just condense my talk a little bit so that we don't hold you too long, but just share some insights, I would like to call it. So I would like to start with, first of all, who in this room is a teacher? Can you Maybe I'm going to get you to stand up, just to give you a bit of energy. Please, can you stand up if you're a teacher? That's very good. Stay there. Lovely to see. This is nice. All right. Now, stay standing or stand up if in the last month somebody external has witnessed you having to handle a difficult situation. If somebody bared witness to you having to handle a difficult situation. So it could have been maybe a waiter in a restaurant brought your food and it was the wrong order, and a third party, someone on another table, a stranger, has someone bared witness to you handling a difficult situation? Please stand up. No? In the last month. Have we got the question? Yeah? No? Anyone bared witness to you handling a difficult situation? No? Okay. Okay, so we've got a majority of the room standing. I know some teachers got tired. Okay, so let's sit down. Well done. So, okay, the reason why I asked this is because actually a majority of the room should stand up by then. Because the reality is that over some point, over the last month, or maybe longer, another person may have witnessed how we handled the difficult moment and learned something from it. And it is that being watched, being absorbed, and being learned from is teaching. It never switches off. And did we notice that, was it just children that were observing you during those difficult moments, or were there other people? Were there adults, could we say, have witnessed you? So it was both children and adults. So, the world is witnessing us, children and adults alike, and it is having an effect. Most of us in this hall carry the title educator, professor, lecturer, leader, early years practitioner, but that is our title. But our first line of business is the one that we are conducting moment to moment, timetabled or not, and that is teaching. And what we are teaching above everything on the syllabus is the art of living. My talk has one idea at its center. We teach who we are in classrooms, in staff rooms, social settings, family gatherings, whilst commuting, places of worship, and much more. I forgot to move the slides. It's like rubbing your head and patting your tummy at the same time. Forgive me. Okay. So, just to take it back, the word teacher, it comes from an old English word called tekan. And here it doesn't mean to tell, it means to show or to point out. And it shares its ancient roots with the word token, meaning a sign or a representation. And if we, as we're gathered in India today, we take the word that this land has given the world, acharya, from the root achara, meaning conduct, yes? Literally, an acharya is one who walks the path so that others may see it being walked. And then if we take the word education, it comes from the Latin word educare, which means to draw out that which is latent within. So, teacher, with its roots from token, meaning sign, representation, or to show, and education mean to draw out, they're related. Because it is what we are showing and how we are being, which sets the tone and actually allows others to respond to us. Have you ever heard the saying that when I stand in my light, I grant the permission for others to stand in theirs? Have you ever heard of that? And it works the opposite way. If I am in my shadow, I also invite others to remain in theirs. Okay, so we'll go to the next. Okay. So, yes, psychology demonstrated this. So in 1961, Albert Bandura sat children in front of adults behaving aggressively towards an inflatable doll. No child was instructed on what to do, no behavior was rewarded. The child simply watched and then spontaneously reproduced what they saw. Bandura called it observational learning. The lesson is simple. We learn by watching and not by listening. Yes. And this is not only about children. We as adults never stop reading one another. You feel the room as you enter a room. You feel the atmosphere before you enter a room. So if somebody gives you a cold shoulder or they're distracted or looking at their phone, we are always perceiving. And there is no, what we say, neutral interaction. We are always leaving something behind. So what determines our influence on the environment? Okay, what is it? So here we have some of our inequalities and our values. That's what determines how we influence others and the environment. So self-awareness and self-regulation as a related value of the core value love. A person who knows their inner weather, we call it, can keep it from raining on others. A person who does not teaches their storms. Accountability as a related value of the core value right action. When we own it and we understand that I am the decisive element in the room, the climate is mine. And when we accept that, we stop being victims of our environment and become their authors. And then we have integrity as a related value of truth. Integrity closes the gap between what we preach and what we practice. When our thoughts and actions are in unity, there is integrity in character. So we have some more, but we have discussed this earlier on in the morning session and in the afternoon session. And it is just mainly the awareness of our inequalities and our values, our state of being. We have to have that hypervigilance over ourselves. How am I feeling? What energy, what vibration, what emotions am I carrying before we interact with others and before we move into an environment or a space, because that vibration that we hold will influence it and impact it positively or negatively. So, what are the barriers? What are the barriers? So we know we have all these good qualities, okay, and we know that we have the power to influence positively. But what are the barriers? Why do we sometimes have negative emotions, or we can't help ourselves when we feel a certain way, to overspill onto others, maybe our family members, our friends, the classroom, the students? What is it? And we say it's when the not self. Has anyone heard of that term before, not self, and what it means? Yes. Would you like to share your definition of what it means?
So I think I read that self is our magnanimous, flourishing, radiant, true reality, eternal self. And anything non-self is just like any mud that hides the gold of the soul. That's not self.
Wow.
If that makes sense.
That's beautiful. Can we give her a round of applause? That's lovely. I love that. I love that analogy. Any mud that hides the gold of our soul. Okay, absolutely. So, let us be honest, because we are in a room full of people who work in real institutions. If these qualities are who we truly are, why do so many meetings feel like a chess match? Why are staff rooms sometimes the least collaborative rooms in the building? Not because our colleagues are bad people, but there are three things getting in the way. The physiology of stress, the personal load we will start with. Every adult in every corridor is carrying something invisible. We meet each other mid-battle and mistake exhaustion for coldness. And then we have the physiology of stress. A brain in a threat state narrows. So then we become self-protective. And this is not by choice, but by biology. A frightened nervous system cannot collaborate, and it cannot defend. This is why we have to be so hypervigilant of these things, because it has a knock-on effect with productivity and output. Survival tactics dressed as professionalism. So in institutions that feel unsafe, people play games, not from wickedness, but from insecurity, and which leads to behaviors such as credit hoarding, strategic silent, point scoring, and much more. Let's see. And here we have a table to show that contention actually is a cost center. So we can see how much it costs when there is contention or there isn't cohesion and harmony within an institution. It financially impacts the institution. And then, as I mentioned earlier, productivity. Here we see colleagues deliberately reduce effort after experiencing a disrespectful situation by 48%. So we can see the impact of when we are unable to, it's the connection between our internal state and we are unable to hold that inner harmony, and then it spills over, and then it creates an atmosphere of discord and how it affects collaboration and the institution on a wider part. I think we spoke a little bit about this, and it was in the video earlier where they tested saliva within the students, and they could see a direct correlation between high levels of cortisol in the teacher and that of the student. So this is just reiterating the science behind how we are related, and we form this ecosystem and we mirror one another. So I didn't want to harp on too much about the theory, okay, because we've had a lot of that. I feel that the most important things is how. We need tools. We have to be practical. We have to implement. We have to action. If we're not doing that part, then it's a waste, right? So here we have some techniques on how we can ensure that we have good emotional hygiene. So there's 4 different, but I'm just going to share with you 2. One is the 2-minute intention on arrival. So before you touch your inbox, before the first knock at your door, 2 minutes, put your phone face down and ask yourself one question. What is the weather that I am choosing to bring to this building or classroom or even to my home today? Just ask yourself that question. Then another is what we call the doorway ritual. Every time you cross a threshold, just take 3 slow, deep breaths. So breathe in deeply and exhale really slowly. And the exhalation should be longer than the inhalation. Only 3. And it takes about 11 seconds. Okay, only 3. And in doing so, and then they say, after taking those 3 deep breaths, whoever crosses your path first, greet them sincerely with energy and a smile. Okay, this changes your energy and the mood and the atmosphere that you are creating, because the room borrows the nervous system that you walk in with. I won't go on. Okay. So, yeah, okay. So, we've gone from, we know, or at least hopefully by now, we have become aware that actually we are all teachers. Would you agree? Yes. Okay, good. That was the answer. Well done. We got there. We got there. You're doing great, guys. Okay, we are all teachers because we are teaching moment to moment in all of our walks of life, okay? And it is the inequalities that determine if we have a positive impact and influence on each other and the environment, for better or for worse. Okay, there is a beautiful, beautiful quotation from Sri Satya Sai Baba that links how character or harmony within the individual relates to peace in the world. I just want to share it. Some of you might be familiar with this. Where there is righteousness in the heart, there is beauty in the character. Where there is beauty in the character, there is harmony in the home. Where there is harmony in the home, there is order in the nation. Where there is order in the nation, there is peace in the world. So this is really important. So notice the direction of the chain. Peace in the world is the last link, not the first, because we spend our lives sometimes demanding it from the wrong end, from things like treaties and from the government and from other people. But the chain cannot be assembled backwards. World peace is not a policy, it is a harvest. And the seed is harmony in the heart of the individual. And so here we have it, and Sister Bhuvana explained it this morning, that it's the role of the educator and the parent. It's so important. You know, if we think right back, the educator and the parent were almost regarded as being the same. The teacher was regarded as being the same. They were given the same authority, and the trust was there because it was understood how important that individual's influence was on the child, not just academically, but in shaping them for life, in preparation for life. And they had the awareness of that this individual is forming society and is setting the tone for generations to come. That wisdom was always at the heart of it. But somewhere along the line, as time has gone on and there has formed insecurity between man, and trust has broken down and barriers have broken down, this bond and this bridge between the teachers have disintegrated, and this trust, and it really needs to be rebuilt, because the only person that suffers from it are the children. Okay, so it starts with the parent and the educator. When there is harmony as well between the two of them and unity between the two of them. So harmony in each educator and parent as an individual in their heart, and then harmony between the two of them. There will be harmony in the child. When there's harmony in the child or the individual, in the home, then in the nation and in the world. So, okay, we're here. I'll just make sure. Where are we? So, this was a study by Reichl, and he did research on self-awareness, and found that 95% of people believe that they are self-aware, but in reality, only 10 to 15% actually are. And that's where the world's trouble lives, within that gap. Okay, it's within there. Because we only have to look at the news and the media around the world to see that the crisis that we are facing is not due to a shortage of intelligence, but to a shortage of human values. So if 1 person in 7 is truly awake to themselves, then a hall of educators like this, deliberately doing the inner work, is not simply a nice gathering or an interesting thing to do. It is a strategic intervention in the state of the world. That is what we are doing here. This conference call is about bettering ourselves as part of the betterment of society. So really, really understanding that it starts with us. We must take care of our internal state of being. We have to put the energy and the effort into understanding our inner wiring, our triggers, our likes, our dislikes, being able to be vulnerable, being able to be fearless and look at the sides of us that are uncomfortable. Because when we do that, we can change, we can transform, and we can then impact and help others. Yes, mate. We have a question.
Yes, sir. Really very nice presentation, and it was seems to be good work you guys have done. The one thing just I wanted to scale out that this is very good at the time when we are, thinking about it in a AC room and we are discussing about the things. But especially for the educators, when when a teacher enters in the class, there are lots of the mental absence of the the teacher have to do the syllabus, ending of the syllabus at the time, the family problems, lots of the problems the teacher have, and then enter in the class, and you have to look after the whole class. Yes. So how at that time balancing in each the personal level at the professional level. Yeah. So this is the I think this is the general genuine question. So then only he can perceive harmony and all the things among the students. So yeah. Do we have something like that?
Yes, I love it. Hello? Wonderful. I love this question. This is great because it's very real and it's true. Because talking about all of this is luxury, really. If in reality, the teacher is overloaded. Okay, if they're overloaded with having to meet targets and metrics, which have nothing to do with emotional development within the child and everything to do with academic performance. And what will you do if you're in that position? You will prioritize academic performance. So you're not wrong. And this is something we have to be aware of because the institutions have the responsibility where in senior positions and in leadership, we have to provide the framework to support our teachers. We have to pour into our teachers from the understanding of how critical and important their role is in society. Okay, so it's true, yes, as individuals, we have a responsibility, we have our own homework, but the institutions really need to get on board and think, actually, by doing this, it's about not working hard, but working smart. Because if we lay this foundation and it's in place, and we have training, there is SEL, Social and Emotional Learning for Teachers. Dr. Kimberly Reichl, the one who we saw with the interview, she started out in schools, and she was a teacher, and she formed SEL for students. Because she was very passionate. She thought, we need to go in, we need to help the students. Then quickly she learned, actually, the teachers, if they can have social and emotional learning, which is not just about so that they can perform in the classroom, but how you can manage home stresses, your responsibilities, how you can understand yourself as an individual, how you can have more harmony, how you can give more grace to yourself and then to others. It is not about getting it right and perfect. Actually, it's about being able to say, I'm not sure, or I don't know how, or I need support. These are the behaviors that as teachers, as educators, we need to be able to demonstrate so that our children and other colleagues can then feel safe enough to be vulnerable and ask for the same. So it's not just on you, but also you need the support from the institution. If they can get on board, it will just help. Okay, thank you. Okay, so I will just close with a final thought. So the question this conference asked us is not what will I teach next term, it is who am I becoming? Because that is what everyone around me is learning. Tend the inner flame first, the self-awareness, the integrity, the compassion, and the stubborn belief in every person before you, child and adult. The chain runs through this room. Harmony in you and me equates to harmony in the child, which equates to harmony in the home, in the nation, and in the world. Sri Satya Sai Baba taught that the end of education is character. Then it means that the educator's character is where all education begins. And the educator's harmony is where peace begins. We teach who we are, so let us be worth learning. Now, can I end on one final question? Who in this room is a teacher? Please, can we stand? Please, let me see. Who is a teacher? So beautiful. Thank you. You all are. Thank you so much. You've been amazing. Thank you. Thank you.
As we come to the close of this insightful session, we are reminded that values are not developed by instruction alone. They are nurtured through relationships, experiences, reflection, and example. From understanding the psychological foundations of values, to discovering the power of play in shaping character, to recognizing the role of social and emotional learning, and finally reflecting on the profound truth that we teach who we are. Today's speakers have offered us a holistic view of how values take root and flourish. The message is clear. If we aspire to raise compassionate, resilient, and responsible individuals, we must first cultivate these qualities within ourselves and create learning environments where values are experienced every day. With these inspiring reflections, we thank all our esteemed speakers for enriching us with their wisdom and insights. Before we depart, there are a couple of announcements with regard to tomorrow's schedule. Breakfast will be between 7 a.m. to 7:45 a.m. and session 3 will begin at sharp 8 a.m. and will continue till 9:30. And there will be a tea break for 15 minutes, after which we will have session 4 and it will be between 9:45 and 11:45 a.m. And session 5 will begin at 11:30 and it will end at 12:45. And after which we shall have lunch and proceed to Sai Krishnan Premamritam Hall for the valedictory session in the evening. We will now have humane question book distribution by the university team. Kindly be seated. Thank you.